Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another podcast episode. My name is Alicia Gogan, the host of the Globe Secrets podcast, where I help you expand your mind and become more self-aware so that you can glow up into the best version of yourself. Hello, how are we doing? Luteal girls, unite. I am in my luteal phase, and oh my gosh, has this phase been a roller coaster of emotions. Guys, listen, I mildly struggle with PMDD, okay? And I thought that I didn't at one point in my life, but it's very clear that I do. And I can manage my mood swings when I'm in my luteal phase, but sometimes it just takes me on a ride. But you know what I like to do with things that are messy in my life, when things feel confusing and chaotic? I like to create beauty and art out of it. And the way I do that is bringing it to my podcast. So I feel like this episode might be a little bit deep. It might be all over the place, but I really am trying to express something that I have been coming to a big realization on in my own life. And I just know you guys will resonate with this because it involves self-sabotage and it involves the human experience. And you guys all at some point deal with it just the way that I do. So I want to talk about how when you don't feel like you have a spark of joy for life, or you're not feeling motivated, or you're feeling very stagnant in life, why that is not a reason for you to sabotage this moment in your life. And I feel like a lot of you can probably relate to doing this. I think that in my own life, I have lived my life in extremes. I have lived my life in very low lows and very high highs. And I've never learned really how to coast through life. I've never really learned how to feel comfortable with the ebbs and flows of life, at least until age 25, 6, 7, and now 28 am I really learning that lesson, but also just recalibrating the way that I live life based off of my entire life of living very up and down. There was a lot of scarcity. There was a lot of things were good and then they weren't. And when you come from a life filled with uncertainty, a life where sometimes things are really good and then sometimes things are really, really bad, that makes it hard for you when you grow up to ride the waves of life. It makes it difficult for you to not get triggered all the time when you don't see your goals manifesting, or when you do have hard days, like let's say you're in your luteal phase and you literally feel like, what is life? Sometimes your childhood and sometimes your past experiences have not allowed room for you to be resilient in these times of life where things don't feel very, very high. And I just want this episode to be a reminder to you, and this is a big reminder to me in my life right now, that just because you don't feel a very high, you don't feel motivated, you don't have this spark of joy in your life right now, it doesn't mean that you are in a low. And why I think it's important to remind yourself of these things is because this is what we do. When we don't feel like we're hitting our goals, when we don't feel like our goals are being accomplished, when we don't feel like our manifestations are coming through, when we don't feel genuinely just ready for life, when we wake up in the morning, we're feeling sluggish or we're not motivated, whatever it is in your life, whether it's manifestation or if it's physical health or relationships, whatever, when you don't feel like things are really going your way, this is not the time where you need to go into sabotage, because this is what I've done in my life. When I don't have that spark of life, my nervous system, my inner child, my parts, my whatever, my trauma will always think, okay, well, if things aren't going really great, then there must be chaos. So I must brace myself for this chaos, meaning I must fall into behaviors that keep me comfortable and keep me feeling safe, even though these behaviors do not keep me safe. And what I mean by behaviors, I mean sabotage. I mean self-sabotage. When you're not in that high, you go right to the all or nothing thinking of being like, well, you know what? I don't have motivation to go to the gym right now, or I feel like I'm not hitting my my goals right now, so I'm just going to not do any of my journaling, or I'm not going to go to the gym, or I'm not having a lot of energy to be able to hit all of my goals and be really, really productive today. So that means today is a complete write-off and I'm failing as a human being and I'm just not doing enough and everything is slipping away. And then that gets you into that cycle. And then you start doing these sabotaging behaviors that are not necessary based off of you perceiving yourself being in a low when you're not. And this is something that takes a lot of awareness of yourself when you are doing this, because I didn't know I was doing this in many aspects of my life, of when I wasn't feeling that high of that excitement, of that spark of life. I would kind of just throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, okay, well, I guess I'll just wait for the day that I feel a spark. So instead of feeling like you are in a low just because you're not in a high, I want you to look at this time as if you are coasting, okay? Coasting is very different than you being in a low point of your life. And I want you to think about a car that is coasting. And if you guys don't know, there's actually settings on cars where you can set it to a certain miles per hour. And some of them you still have to put your foot on the gas, but you know, the new cars nowadays, that you could even just like not even drive it. It's crazy. Like, I don't know if it's Teslas or some other cars that you can literally not even have to do anything. Regardless, when you're coasting a car, it's set on a steady speed. And of course, if you need to slow down, you can put your foot on the gas, whatever. But I want you to think about the fact that when a car is coasting, it still requires all of its maintenance. It requires gas. It requires electricity. If you're like driving a Tesla or whatever it is, it requires all the basic functions and needs for this car to continue to coast. Also, when your car is coasting, you're still in the mix of other cars moving, let's say on a highway. Also, when this car is coasting, you're still passing beautiful scenery or beautiful cars. You're still in the moment. This car is still present. And that's how you should be looking at the times of your life where you're not racing to the finish line, where you're not super motivated, or maybe you just don't know exactly where that destination is. That doesn't call for you to completely stop and be like, whatever, I'm not going to take care of this car. I'm not going to maintain this car. And you know what? I'm going to put my foot on this gas completely just because I don't know where I am going. That is not the way we want to live life. And quite frankly, when you inevitably go through those feelings of life just feels like meh, whatever, that is a really potent time for you to continue to maintain what you have going on mentally, emotionally, physically, your life, your everything, your habits, because this is going to prepare you for the time that you know exactly where it is that you want to speed up to. And it might not be every single day you know that, but there's going to be a day. And I have seen the patterns that I have lived out in my life and why sometimes I hit such lows in my life and why I hit such highs in my life. Right before I hit highs in my life, I tend to be in that coasting energy. I tend to be maintaining my mindset. I tend to have some goals for myself where, yeah, maybe I don't exactly know where those are leading me, but I'm in a consistent flow of something. I am self-loving myself through the process of change. I am not putting too much on my plate. I'm accepting the boredom sometimes that is coasting. I'm just really accepting and being in that present moment. And that is always when I hit that high. And I can think back to a very potent time in my life when my YouTube channel really blew up in 2022. The summer before my YouTube channel blew up, I was technically in a coasting energy. I could have looked at my situation as a low because I wasn't really happy with my situation. I was still working a job I didn't want financially. I was still making it out of the debt that I was in. I had so many things I wanted to accomplish and I did not have that. I was still really getting out of the situation that I once perceived as a low, but I knew in that time I was no longer going to look at my situation like I was in a low. I was going to look at it as I am coasting up into my high and I am going to nurture myself in this moment right now. I am going to be spiritually aligned. I am going to keep my eyes on the prize. I am going to, when I have those bad days, not take those days as evidence to prove myself that I am not getting what I want. And lo and behold, what happened after that season of coasting? I went on a high. Now, alternatively, I have had many times where I've been on a very high and I have have completely crashed because I had let go of those habits and those things that sustained me through those coasting periods of my life because I felt so high. So this is also another reminder. If you're maybe even in a high right now in your life, do your best to not let go of those things that allowed you to get to that high in the first place. And it is so fine to relish in your accomplishments. I think when I became really big on my YouTube journey and I ended up leaving my 9 to 5 and, I ended up getting my new condo and I moved downtown and my life was really, really just aligned. I was very aligned. I learned how to move with my energy in terms of being creative. So really creating content based out of my mood and what I felt called to versus just forcing myself to create content and be more in that structure because I knew that no longer served me. Those type of things. It was great to do that, but there was definitely times where I fell off of those habits that kind of pushed me back into that low through the end of last year. And I was having a really hard time at the end of last year. I went into a very deep depression. Now, it wasn't just because I just allowed myself to have the best time ever and lost myself throughout the summer, because I didn't. I think I did a really, really good job considering I have lived my life in complete highs and complete lows in my life. I felt like I did a really good job at making sure that my finances were stable after making way more money than I ever had in my life. Like, I was very responsible with the high of my life. But of course, there were still a few things that in my personal life, like outside of even really my career, that kind of took me off the path, which is totally fine because again, this is life, right? It's just a season of life. But I knew that I was falling really deep into that low because there was things that I let go of that would have helped me in those times where inevitably you go back into that coasting period. And I honestly can even look at this when it comes to luteal phase. And if you guys don't cycle sync, then maybe you won't know too much of what I'm saying. But when you are going through your cycle as a woman, you have 4 phases of your cycle. Everyone is different. If you're on hormonal birth control, you are not naturally going through these phases, so you might not necessarily feel them as hard as somebody who is off of birth control. And also, depending on your genetic makeup, depending on your life circumstance, you might be more susceptible to these lows. So actually, maybe like a quick side note, if anyone's dealing with any sort of PMS symptoms, luteal phase, depression or mood swings, things like that. I feel like a lot of us deal with that, but also even PMDD. What usually happens around that time is it's not necessarily that you have more hormones than the average woman, but you're just more sensitive when you are in your luteal phase to that drop in certain types of hormones, or the fluctuation, I should say, in those hormones. So you feel those lower lows in your life, which means during this time, you want to be really tapped into those coasting habits in your life because you know that that wave might hit you. And for me, sometimes those waves hit me a lot more if I am not keeping up with my coasting habits and those behaviors. If I am going through something in my life, obviously that luteal phase is going to hit me even harder. Right now in my life, I feel like I just came off of a very big high socially, and also I drank a little bit when I was social, which is not the best when it comes to depression if you're very sensitive to that kind of stuff. So it's no wonder that my luteal phase right now, I'm kind of feeling it a little bit more, which is totally fine, right? We live and we learn. I can manage my mood. I can manage my life. I have gone through so many times, but it's just really apparent to see, okay, you know what? There are ebbs and flows in life. How can I support myself in those times where it's just going to be inevitable? And I do find throughout my cycle, there are times during my luteal phase where I'm not really hitting that deep low because I have been coasting pretty good in my life leading up to that luteal phase. So why do I say all of this? I say this because I feel like when we naturally feel that dip in our spark for life, whether that is because you are going through your luteal phase or genuinely just life just feels very whatever, do not take this as a reason for you to sabotage your current moment and make everything 10 times more difficult for you just because you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And listen, this is what you do when you sabotage, right? Your self-sabotaging behaviors, whatever it is that you do, whether you overeat or you don't get up and move your body, or you text the ex, or you go out and party, or you go and scroll for hours, all of those things are actually keeping you comfortable, okay? So understand that you don't need to have these things to make you feel comfortable, because you're allowed to be comfortable in the coasting period. You're just not used to doing that. And the reason why it's important to not look at this period of your life as, oh my gosh, it's a low, is because the self-sabotaging behaviors that you do when you look at your life as if you're in a low will make it difficult for you to get out of this low. And the truth is, you are a human being and you are going to have a spark of joy. Even if it's the lowest, tiniest amount of spark that you're going to have in your life, you're going to have it. There's going to be a day I come out of my luteal phase. There's going to be a day where I'm so sick of my shit that I want something more for myself. There's going to be a day where I hit my goals and I'm going to want something else, even if I don't know what that is right now. So knowing that information about myself and the way that the world works and the way that human beings work, I want to set up myself for the easiest time throughout this roller coaster of life. Meaning, when I am feeling no spark in my life, what is the bare minimum that I can do to coast instead of dropping absolutely everything and thinking that nothing is working? Well, let me give you a few things that I do in my life that helps me on those times, and also things that I would like to continue to do, because I'm also a work in progress, and the more that I really clock my patterns, I can then make sure to have a toolkit that really helps me personally. But these are just things that I do in my day. You're going to need to figure out what actually works for you. So the first thing is a mindset shift, really a reminder to myself when I am not feeling the most motivated for life, is just looking at these days as just the days that I'm not on a high. That's it. It's not that I'm on a low. It's not that I'm losing. It's not that my manifestations are not coming. It's not that I'm messing anything up. It's not like anything other than the fact that today I don't feel so high. The next thing I like to do, especially when I'm feeling low, is I give myself permission to follow what feels good. And this is very counterintuitive to many of us. One, because we're usually taught to do things we don't want to do, or we have to force ourselves to do it, especially in that masculine type of structure, energy, society. But then also on the flip side, usually when we're in a low, we don't really feel like doing anything. But I would highly suggest you tap more into what you actually feel like doing, even when you're in a low, because I can guarantee you there are still things that you actually feel a little bit more called to do even on your low days, but you might deem them as not productive, or I can't do that right now. I shouldn't be doing that right now. I should be more productive, this, that. And the way I like to rationalize this is, realistically, how often do you actually get yourself to do the things you tell yourself you need to do on your low days? It's usually very minimal that you actually get yourself to do it. Usually you just end up procrastinating, or you do those things half-assed. So in my personal opinion, I would rather just completely erase all that resistance as much as I obviously can, even though it hurts to maybe not feel like I'm being productive that day, but realistically I'm not being productive by procrastinating, and instead do the things that I feel more called to. So maybe you tend to always do the same type of workouts because you're on this workout schedule, but today you don't feel like doing that, and what you have no resistance to is going on a walk and listening to a podcast that has nothing to do with your goals right now. Just do it then. If that makes you feel like no resistance, just go do that. Even if it feels like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that, or oh my God, it's going to ruin my goals. No, it's not going to ruin your goals. Just allow yourself to do that. And I can guarantee you, you will find you have so much more alignment in your day when you do the things that you actually feel no resistance to. I do this when I'm recording my podcast episodes. I do this with plans with people. I do this with creative projects. I do this as much as I can, because there's not a point in you wasting your mental and your physical and your spiritual energy living in consistent resistance. And what I mean by that is, when you have a low day, you spend a lot of energy stressing about every single thing that you're not motivated to do. Instead of doing that, could you not put your energy into something that you have least resistance to? So what are you feeling like doing today right now? Is that laying in bed and watching Love Island after you're done your workday, or if you have a day off when you're supposed to be super, super motivated and productive and you're supposed to hit all your goals, but you just can't do it and your mind is all over the place and you're stressing, and then instead of you actually allowing yourself to do exactly what you want to do, you spend your time procrastinating and scrolling on TikTok and then getting in your head and telling yourself you need to rebrand your life and then stressing about the fact that you're nowhere near your goals and that your life is a mess and this, that. I need you to think about what is actually more in alignment for you right now in this moment. And I know you're going to have a part of you, that controlling part of you, the masculine structure, that's going to be like, both of these things are not productive. Why would I decide to sit in my bed and watch Love Island all day? How could I? I shouldn't be doing that, whatever. I want you to lovingly put that part of you aside, because I'm not asking that part of you. I'm asking the part of you that is very wise, that knows exactly your patterns. If you only had two options, what would it be? Would it be to continue to resist the things that you keep telling yourself to do all day? Or would it be to put that stuff on the back burner? You know you're going to come to it eventually. And quite frankly, you're going to be more productive to do these things when you are actually in alignment. And today is clearly not the day. And instead, how would you feel about your day if you actually did the thing that you wanted to do? And if it's only Love Island, if that's the only thing that you can do today that you feel like doing, why don't you just try to do that with no resistance? And you tell me how better you feel. And listen, this is not an easy task for anyone in life, especially the ones who have a dream, a vision, who are most likely still operating out of scarcity, fight or flight, trying to make their way in life. That is also me. But what I have came to realize in my life is living out of resistance has never gotten me the places that I need to go. Now, when it comes to these low days where I am basically choosing the path of least resistance as much as I can. And listen, I want to reiterate this. I understand that you have to still live your life, and bring it back to coasting through life. You should. You still got to work. You still got to make money. I still have to get up here and talk. I still have to wake up and move my body and eat. These are things that you still need to do, but choosing to take the path of least resistance as much as you can is great. And there are different versions of maintenance that you can do in your life. Okay. So I will again kind of give you some examples of what I mean by this. I still work, okay? I still record my podcast episodes, but maybe that day, taking the path of least resistance is not doing that topic that I told myself I really want to do and I have a script for, or I have points that I want to talk about, or I've been saying I want to do it, because that doesn't feel in alignment. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to record. I am just going to speak more from my heart today. Or does this mean that today, when I'm having a low day, that I'm not going to take care of my body and move my body? No, I just might not go to the gym and do my leg day. I might have to let go of the idea that my glutes are not going to be growing today. Okay, not a big deal. I'm going to go out and go for a walk, or I'm going to book a class that I don't normally do. There's going to be things that I can still do and still pour into myself and keep me coasting. Again, we are not looking to completely throw out every single thing that keeps us coasting just because we have a low day. Taking the path of least resistance is not throwing out your entire life. It is not choosing to be responsible in your life. It just means what is a better alternative in this moment right now, because clearly my soul is not aligning to the on paper goals and habits that I have created for myself in the periods where most likely I was on a very high in my life. And that is totally fine. And these are the times when I am in this coasting energy that I allow room to change my habits and my routines. So maybe my night routine looks different. Maybe my morning routine looks different. Maybe my self-care looks a little bit different. Kind of coming back to content, maybe my content strategy for this period of my life looks a little bit different. I really allow room for that, because there's just not a point on continuously living in resistance, because when you feel the resistance and when you're living in resistance, that's where you have this energy of my life is falling apart and I'm not getting what I want. And that's when you go into those self-sabotaging behaviors that don't bring you from where you're at to where you want to go in your life. Now, I think a very important thing No matter if you're coasting, if you find yourself in a really low, because, sometimes that happens, or you're on a really high, is to really prioritize your mental diet. And this can be difficult when you're not feeling motivated. But I think the moment that I lose sight of what I know to be true about myself in the world, and when I lose those really positive beliefs about myself and what gets to happen, and I lose sight of my self-confidence and my self-concept and everything like that, that is when I tend to find myself really going off the rails. So if you can do just one thing in this period of your time, if you're resonating with this episode, is to have a daily practice of journaling, or even having a conversation with yourself, however it is that you like to tap into the wisdom that is yourself, the wisdom that is the truth of the universe and yourself, which is you are going to get what you want. This is not the end. You are just coasting. That type of wisdom and energy is so important. I think that really changes the course of whether you're going to feel like you are going in that low and you're going to sabotage, or you're going to stay in that coasting energy, is based off of if you're having that practice of reminding yourself of who you are and what you get to have in your life. And some of the things I like to remind myself when I am coasting are all reminders and affirmations of any of the things that I currently do not have yet that I want to have, or I want to experience more of, even if I've experienced a little bit of that. And I think some of these affirmations are universal wants for everyone. You are going to find love. You are going to make more money. Your spark for life will come back. Your anxiety will lessen. You will find that friend group. You will find your dream home. You will be able to buy your dream home. Your health will improve. There will come a day when you are motivated again. There will come a day where you get in that energy that you reminisce from years ago, or a year ago, or a few months ago, that time of your life where you were so aligned, where things were just working, where everything was just making sense, everything came so easily to you, all your manifestation just hit like that. That time will come again. And in the meantime, how can you do the best you can to coast through this period of life? Do not let yourself go. Do not self-sabotage this period of your life just because you don't feel that spark. It's okay. You are safe. The world is not ending. Your life is not shattering because you are in this coasting period of your life right now. Now, I said there's a few things that I would like to focus on as I continue to move through this lifetime to help me with this roller coaster of life. And some of those things are just knowing my patterns in my cycles and the things that tend to affect my wavelength. So especially for me, it is around the time when I'm about to move into my luteal phase, which is 2 weeks before you bleed. I want to be better with conserving my energy and the things that I'm putting into my body, and the sleep cycle and the habits that I'm doing around that time, because I really do think that it really dictates whether I am going to go in a very low, which I will be more susceptible to doing self-sabotaging behaviors. And this kind of ties into the 2 weeks before my luteal phase, where I tend to be more on a high in my life, making sure that I am being very consistent with my habits so that they are in place when I hit that lower level of emotion and basically hormonal imbalance in my life. Because obviously sometimes when you feel really happy and things are going great and stuff in your life, you tend to kind of like, maybe I don't need my journaling, or maybe I'm just gonna go drink out with my friends and this that. And it's not to mean that we can't do that, and I will absolutely allow myself to live my life, but I just want to be a little bit more aware of some of the things that I'm doing in my life that will contribute. So for me personally, at least what I've been seeing the past 2 cycles that I've been in is it's hard too, because when I am in my high of my hormonal cycle is when I'm ovulating, and I tend to have a lot more energy. So then I like to go out and I like to socialize. And usually when I socialize, I will have some alcohol. So the times that I am hitting my luteal phase, I've been doing such a good job at literally drinking like nothing when I go out with my friends. It's so great. So I'm happy to see myself do that, but I'm just going to be a little bit more aware of when I hit that luteal phase to not drink alcohol. In my personal experience, it just affects my mood a lot, and that just does not set me up for success. I also want to practice healthier boundaries when it does come to social situations and events and things like that. I've been finding myself in situations where I am really affecting my sleep schedule based out of hanging out with friends and going out and having really late nights, which just takes a simple communication with my friends to be like, this is what I'm going to be more available for, and this is what I'm not. I can't go out and do all these things very late because it affects my sleep. And when it affects my sleep, it's going to affect my mood if I'm around my luteal phase. So these are the times where I am either going to set those healthy boundaries with my friends or thinking about having some more weekends where I'm spending time with myself and having a little bit more self-care, because I just find that allows me to stay in that coasting energy when I am naturally falling into those lower levels of emotions. Now, the last thing I am going to be focusing on personally for me is I like to take a lot of continuing education courses all of the time. I'm always learning. I have different sparks of interest always in my life. So I'll just go down a rabbit hole and I will learn something until I'm like, okay, cool, love that. Do I want to use this as a part of my journey? Which I always do. Everything you learn in your life is essentially part of your journey, but is this like going to be a big part of my journey, or is it just going to be something that I learned and then this allows me to have like a little puzzle piece to the big thing, whatever. So with that said though, when you are studying for something or you're taking a course, that does require a little bit more consistency and structure and like masculine energy per se. And I think that anyone who is studying in school right now, you probably struggle with being able to just take the path of least resistance and, do what feels good, because you might have actual deadlines and you might actually have things. And honestly, even though I don't necessarily always have deadlines, depending on the course that I'm taking, when it comes to studying something or writing something, it does require a level of you being consistent. And I take this to the time that I wrote my book. I spent I spent 6 months consistently writing my book. And then the second half of the year, it was more production. But I found when I was writing my book, it was difficult in terms of not trying to figure out what to write, but being consistent, right? Because I have those ebbs and flows and I have those mood swings and I have that's just who I am. And also I'm a Scorpio. I go through things deeply and I feel deeply, and then I have to like come out and I'm not going to say it's a mess. It's actually the most beautiful part of my journey and what makes me me. But this book required me to be consistent even on the days that I was not very motivated, because if you start writing and then you drop writing for 2 days even, but let's say even for a week, it is so much harder for you to get back in the flow of writing, because you have to basically reread everything that you have already written, because you probably kind of forget the energy that you're in. You got to get back into that flow, and then you get into that flow and it's a beautiful work that you probably will come to write. But if you're not showing up consistently, it's just 10 times harder for you to do that. So if you are currently doing something in your life right now, like writing a book or something like that, you might have to know that you're going to have those days where maybe you don't feel that spark, but you're still going to coast, meaning, all right, you know what? I'm probably not going to write 2 chapters today, but I'm going to write a little bit, and a little bit is better than nothing, because if I don't do anything, then tomorrow or the next day, it's going to be 10 times harder for me to start writing this essay or writing my book. So that's a thing. But also something that I like to do, because I'm not actively writing a book right now, like just learning, is I really try to, the days that I have a lot of motivation and a lot of willpower, and I have a lot of just ability to be able to learn and, get in there, is I spend a lot of time doing that. I really get through the things that I need to do. I finish those tasks. I finish those projects. I get that thing done if I can. So obviously it depends on what it is that we're talking about when it comes to assignments and certain things like that. Sometimes it requires you to do it consistently every single day. And if that's the case, then you just have to energetically tap into the coasting energy. But if it doesn't require you to always like show up every single day, because I don't think that everything needs you to be showing up every single day. I think that sometimes our best work comes from those days where, maybe you have all that energy and motivation, you create something that's beautiful, right? Like I think about some of my digital journal guides that I have created for you guys, and you guys still buy to this day, and you guys have really enjoyed them. Those have come from very potent, very quick turnaround energy, like pockets of my life. And that's what it needed to be. I didn't need to spend days and days and days and days and days on something like that. So it kind of depends. You have to be the one to kind of figure out where you're at in your life, but you are the master of your own life and your own energy, and nobody's gonna be able to tell you how to do it but yourself. I can be an inspo. I can help you expand your mind to thinking in a new way and moving through life in a new way, but at the end of the day, it's really up to you. So with that said, I'm gonna leave this episode here, and if you're still listening, I have been having a call to do a different type of schedule, basically not having a schedule when it comes to the podcast. And I've had this intuitive hit a few times throughout this, honestly, like winter, but more so in the spring. And I just didn't really act on it because I wanted to give myself enough time to figure out what I wanted to do. But I'm making a few switches when it comes to the way that I am working. So I don't know if this is going to be the episode where it is posted not on a Monday. I am recording this on Thursday, so I might not even have enough time to get this out before Monday. But I might be posting my podcast episodes whenever I feel like it. And I don't want to scare anyone to think that you are not going to get episodes weekly, because you absolutely will. But I think you guys can understand at this point from this episode alone. But if you listen a lot to my episodes, I am a very feeling first type of person, and I think my best work comes out of the times where I am motivated, I'm inspired, and I'm aligned to create content. That's why a lot of you guys feel very aligned to the pieces of content that I'm putting out, because I'm not like premeditating all of these things. There are definitely ideas that I have, but I am choosing the ideas that I feel the most called to do in my immediate life, or I'm seeing you guys go through something and I'm asking you guys questions and it's very potent. So that's usually why you guys tend to align to the things that I am putting out. But with that said, I feel like it just makes more sense to record my episodes when I want to record them and to get them out as soon as I can versus waiting on Mondays to put them out, because that's also kind of limiting in a way. Because what if there's a week where I'm really motivated to record 3 episodes and they're all really potent and I could post them every few days and you guys have extra episodes and they're really aligned to what you're going through, versus me capping myself at 4 episodes a month and they're on Mondays. I don't think that's really necessary. And because in my mind, I'm on a schedule of 1 episode a week every Monday, there are times where I find myself really inspired and motivated to record a podcast episode, but I will not do it because I have already recorded the episode for the week, or I have an episode that I kind of want to record, but I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to put this idea on the back burner because I have one that's planned right now. And I was going to do that with another episode that I really wanted to come out with, which I'm going to come out with, but I knew it was important to get this episode out. But sometimes what I do is I will have the energy of this episode and I will not record this episode because I had in my head that, I need to do this one first for the Monday type of thing. So I'm going to think about that. Maybe it'll be this episode or maybe it will be next, but let me know how you guys feel about that. I know most of you guys will be okay with that. I mean, obviously this is also my platform, so I have to just do what works for me. And I think when I also do what works for me, it in turn works for you guys, because obviously I'm not going to show up and be a not authentic version of me. I feel like I've been having some comments recently about me sharing certain stories or different things in my life, or how long it takes me to explain something, or people have heard the same thing over and over and this, that, and all love to everyone who supports me and listens to me. But in the most loving way, I have to do what is in alignment with me. And what's in alignment with me is to share from my personal experience. Even if that means you're going to hear that story again, I am not going to answer questions and pull something that I have not experienced in my life just to give you guys new content. I am not going to be that person, that self-development YouTuber or podcaster that produces a mass amount of content just to continue to get a bunch of views or to get new people in or to keep your attention. I understand that not every podcast will resonate with you. I understand that things might be repetitive. I understand that maybe it's annoying to some people if I do not get to the point, but at the end of the day, this is just who I am. Of course, I listen to feedback. It doesn't mean that just because I hear something that I don't take in consideration, but this is also me. I am also somebody who does not think in a linear way. And I think I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast, but I am definitely dyslexic. I definitely experience ADHD. I have had that my entire life. I experience mood disorders. These are things that I have always experienced in my life and I've had to manage. And the reason why I'm saying this, I'm not trying to like, oh my God, this is the reason why you guys aren't going to get exactly what you want if you wanted me to get to the point quicker. But those things make me who I am and make me think the way that I do, which is not linear, which is why sometimes I go on rants, which is why long form works for me, which is why I am not going to rush myself to give people an answer just because you want an answer from me. And that is all with as much love as I can possibly give, even if you might feel offended by me saying that, because I'm really not trying to offend people, but I really just want people who are listening to this podcast and my content to understand that I am also a human being behind this. And yes, I don't take a lot of things very personally, and I understand that people also have their needs and wants and everything like that. Like I totally get that. I know that I am not privy and that I am not untouchable when it comes to comments and stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm like a human being as well, and this is all I can do. Okay? So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please let me know what you want to hear next. Also, put on your post notifications if you are wanting to make sure that you're keeping up to date with my episodes. If I change the schedule, make sure you're following on Spotify as well. So that way you will always have my newest podcast episode in your little like new episode thing, whatever. Also, I'm pretty sure Apple Podcasts, it allows you to follow my thing as well. So just keep up to date. You guys are going to have all the episodes that you need when you need them. Trust that. If you can't trust that, then have trust in me that I know that that is going to be the best way we move forward with whatever that is. And if that means I'm going to continue to just do the Monday episodes, then maybe that will just be. So we will see. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.